Today we have a very special guest here with us, and we are going to dive right into a conversation and make the most of the time we have. She is, of course, the Deputy High Commissioner of UK to Pakistan, and she's also the Deputy Trade Commissioner for Pakistan, Iran, Iraq, Jordan and Lebanon. So, of course, keeping a very keen eye on how the bilateral trade between UK and Pakistan continues to grow, amongst several other things. We have with us the Honourable Sarah Mooney. How are you, Sarah, this morning?
I'm really well. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Let's begin with, something that the world has been talking about. We're getting up towards His Majesty the King's birthday, and this will be the 75th birthday. There are big plans, and there's a global theme of going green, focusing more on sustainability. Please tell us a bit more about that.
So, the King has always been a huge advocate for the environment. I was just saying, when I was a child, I can remember comedians used to mock the King for his interest in sustainability and the environment. He was well ahead of his time. So what we wanted to do, and this is the first King's birthday party we'll have celebrated, what we wanted to do was very much pick up that theme of the environment, green, climate first, climate pele, and run it through all of the King's birthday parties that we're holding here in Pakistan. For us, it's really important. We know how vulnerable Pakistan is to climate change.
Yes.
And so we wanted to really make this a central focus.
It's very interesting. I mean, during your time in Pakistan, we recently had the Pakistan Climate Conference as well, where you were a speaker. Of course, COP28 is around the corner, and then you have a global theme. How receptive do you find the Pakistan policymakers and the corporate sector towards the sustainable practice? The switch is resource intensive. It's going to take time, effort, a lot of funds. What's your take on how we're moving?
I think there's a lot of knowledge. I think the appalling floods last year, really drew attention of everyone to the vulnerability of Pakistan. And I think there is an acceptance of the need to change. I think in the big corporates, there's a real willingness in their CSR programs, for example, to focus on sustainable policies. I think the gap between what is currently being done policy-wise and what will need to be done, and the need to draw in, private investment, corporate investment into climate change policies, that's a hard hill to climb. But the first step is there, it's acknowledgement of the problem. It is now, to get the policies and regulations ready and right to deliver that.
And there are two parts to that puzzle. If I look at how vulnerable Pakistan has been, we had biblical, level impact when it came to the floods that hit us back in 2022. But at the same time, there is, of course, the AQI of big cities like Karachi and Lahore, which is deplorable all throughout the year, and it's very much palpable in this time of the year. So, I mean, it's the everyday routine we have faced with climate change challenges. How big are these two pieces, and how do you see the coordinated efforts for it? There's, of course, going to be rehabilitation and rebuilding for climate-related refugees and the most vulnerable communities. But then again, even the bigger cities are equally vulnerable. How is Pakistan's government making sense of it, and how do you look at it from where you are watching it?
I mean, you're absolutely right. The scale of the individual problems of vertiginous put together is huge. It requires a global response. And I think that Pakistan, certainly at the last COP27, Pakistan showed real leadership in addressing some of these global issues. And I'd like to think that Pakistan could retain that global leadership going forward into the next COP. But it will require huge global, local, national coordination to get this right.
Do you think countries like Pakistan, with the kind of inflationary pressures we have, the businesses are finding the incentive to go green and move towards innovative, sustainable policies because they see it as an additional cost? The government or the policymakers, given our political chaos at this point in time, doesn't seem to have that push into getting an overboard, across the board compliance. Are people willing to make the switch?
I think that Pakistan has a lived experience of climate change perhaps more so than most other countries. And I think if the political parties, the big corporates, the major organisations can bring people with them as they move forward in this policy space. But it is not an easy journey.
Absolutely.
It is not an easy journey. It is not an easy journey in the UK, where we struggle with things like policies around clean air. So there are global issues, and we can learn from each other. And organisations like the Commonwealth, where we're bringing together sort of groups on the Blue Charter, for example, which Pakistan's a member of, looking at how we can create a sustainable blue economy and sharing best practice through organisations like that. These are all ways where we can help each other.
Sarah, there are several areas where there can be better coordination and collaboration. I was just speaking to the Minister for Environment for Punjab yesterday, and he says that, of course, when you look at Lahore, a lot of the smog and the pollution problem is, again, a shared problem between Pakistan and India. And it seems to be that, you know, the polluters, the big factories, the big emitters are across the border. And when the direction of the wind changes, of course, it impacts Pakistan as well. Do you see UK has a role of forgetting Pakistan and India to perhaps come together on the subject of climate and look at it with a fresh eye, park the other conflicts, but perhaps have a more coordinated effort when it comes to fighting climate impact?
I think there are a lot of organisations under which India and Pakistan can get together to address these issues. I served in Delhi for 4 years, and the air pollution there is as bad as Lahore. It's a terrible problem. You know, visibility. I flew into Lahore last year, and as we were coming in, you could actually see the reflection, the shadow of the plane on the smog.
Wow.
It's
surreal when you think about it.
It's tangible almost. So no, I would applaud any attempt by India and Pakistan to work together to address the issues of climate change. But as I say, it's a global issue. And there are many global organisations.
Can you put your faith in the young people of both the countries? Because I see they definitely, in their own way, have been advocates, because this is the generation that didn't create the problem, but definitely are held responsible in finding solutions for it. One thing I do want to laud is how the Chevening scholarships have been supporting people who'd like to pursue this as, you know, the subject that they want to have more in-depth knowledge about. You have been supporting subject experts when it comes to climate impact. And how has their experience been? You recently also had a get-together for Chevening scholars who've attempted such programs in the recent past.
Actually, Chevening's been great in this space, and the scholarships that are looking at climate innovation, climate resilience, have been really successful. Very much like to see that continued. There are also other scholarships, the Commonwealth scholarships as well, and we'd like to see more applications from Pakistan for Commonwealth scholarships in this space. I think it'd be really exciting. Another area where I'd like to see more Pakistani applicants is Prince William's Earthshot Prize, looking at innovative solutions to support climate resilience and address the issues of climate change.
And what do you think would be the savior at the end of the day? I was recently, one of the Commonwealth programs, the study conference took me to Canada, and I saw some of the most resourceful organizations of the world feeling rather helpless. Yes, what they are doing as a major step is to ensure that there's carbon capture, but then they don't know what to do with that carbon, so they're kind of putting it back in the earth, hoping that they'll know what to do with it a couple of years down the line. So where do you see this innovation and this in-depth study moving towards?
I agree with carbon capture. What I would say, though, is that it's going to require a vast array of interventions to remove carbon, re-engineer that carbon. And storing it for a while, that's not a worry to me. Yes. There are plenty of places where it can be stored. What is going to be required is that global solutions. We've done it before. We did it with ozone. We removed those chemicals from industry, which were destroying the ozone layer, in the Montreal Protocol, we never thought we could do that, but we did it. We can do this. It just requires a climate first, climate pele approach by governments.
And you think there are, of course, the developed countries who have been leading research and innovation, but the ones which have huge populations like Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan, do you think they are really prioritizing climate the way you envision it, or the way humanity needs to?
I think we're getting there.
We're getting there.
We're getting there. We're working with, for example, with LUMS and the Worldwide Fund for Nature on a forest fire early warning detection pilot. Forest fires are increasing globally because of extraordinary heating. So yes, they are getting there. I've been to universities in Pakistan with the most extraordinary PhDs working on climate-related issues. And these are people whose families have suffered, for example, in the floods in Sindh last year. So yes, but not enough yet.
And I feel if you look at the entire society, women can be huge advocates. And when we talk about bringing about a social change, that is something that also came up during the Pakistan Climate Conference, that it all circles back to the key decision makers, and women have a huge role to play in that. How do you find Pakistani women, an average Pakistani woman, to be receptive to the messages?
I think so. I mean, last week I was out in Sindh at a village that was being rebuilt by the Karachi Relief Trust. And the women there were playing a vital part in supporting the rebuilding of their village. They know what climate change did. They lost their homes. What we need to do, though, is elevate their voices. And often this is through education. And unfortunately, those same floods had a devastating impact on the education of the children of Sindh and Baluchistan and Punjab. And sadly, fewer girls returned to school after the floods than boys. So I think education is going to be an absolute priority in elevating women's voices.
You're right. And sometimes I feel that public pressure seems to be missing. Just yesterday, when we were having a very detailed segment about the smog in Lahore, it's high time that the people start putting more pressure on the policymakers, on the corporates, on the companies, and even, start holding themselves accountable for doing more. As long as you'll just continue saying that, okay, it's not really my problem, it's going to hit, the next generation, I'm not going to be around to really see the devastation. Well, the devastation is happening right now. We're having trouble breathing. Already the studies are pointing out that your life expectancy in Lahore goes down by 7 whole years if you spent a little time there breathing that air. But whenever I speak to policymakers, Sarah, they sort of circle back to climate financing and how the developed world needs to pay more to facilitate them, to have some kind of climate fund pickup because our emissions are less than 1%. So what should Pakistan's expectations be from COP28?
I think Pakistan should be ambitious going into COP28. And I think that Pakistan should genuinely show the leadership it showed in COP27, as I said. But I think we need to continue to apply pressure. I mean, the UK has just committed £2 billion to the Green Climate Fund. That's our largest ever commitment, our largest ever pledge in the climate space. But we need to keep the pressure on other countries and work in partnership. But I do believe Pakistan has a very clear voice, as such a vulnerable country, has a very clear voice at COP28. And I really hope that it demonstrates the leadership it should.
Something that the world has common in the last 1 year has been extraordinary inflationary pressures. Like even in UK, we've been hearing about the heating versus eating, the crisis. And elections are going to be a year down the line. Do you feel that the public pressure has shifted towards, okay, bring the prices down, make living more affordable, and climate has kind of slipped down on the agenda? Have you noticed that around the world?
When you're in economic difficulties, that's your priority. But this is a long-term super threat that we are facing. So whilst it may shift and wane, we cannot afford to step away from the policies which will achieve the sort of 1.5. So we need to halve emissions by 2030. We've got to do it. And the tough policies, the longer we delay them, the harder they will be.
And for that, one thing I look at is how UK has had a very robust clean energy policy, the going green, and also a very clear idea of congestion charges being slapped on cars, going all towards e-vehicles. Do you think a formula like that would even work for Pakistan, given our infrastructure, given our population size? Is that even possible?
I think that the innovations which are being made in hydrogen, batteries and energy storage, I do believe that picking up these innovations and rolling them out in Pakistan will work. There will be a need, though, for the investment to crowd in. A sort of macroeconomic certainty and consistency needs to be found in Pakistan in order to draw in this investment. The size of the population of Pakistan makes it very attractive for inward investors. The difficulty is in the market certainty and the regulations. So those alone, which are tough to implement, but not vertiginously expensive, those alone can help Pakistan pull in these measures and pull in the innovations which are happening elsewhere. But also could link the really exceptional studies that are being carried out here in the universities to some of the innovators elsewhere. There is it's not without hope.
Yes, yes. And some of the innovations is really the low-hanging fruit. If you look at a city like Karachi, a solid waste management needs some robust changes. We need innovative ways of doing that. And of course, there's several low-hanging fruits out there that we can work towards it. They're not very resource intensive. All it requires is that will and that public pressure to be there. We're going to take a short break and come back with what else is exciting and is happening and build up on this conversation. How can UK and Pakistan work together towards it? There is, of course, the matter of developing experts, subject experts who'd like to pursue climate innovation as a study area. That's available to you. But what are some of the other avenues? We'll learn more about them. Our focus today has been all about the climate and sustainability. Pakistan is gearing up to have an effective participation and representation at the COP28, being marked as one of the most vulnerable countries. Of course, there's a lot that needs to be done, desired, and the world really needs to pay attention to Pakistan's case. We need friends around the world, and of course Sarah has been talking about the various initiatives of how UK has been supporting Pakistan in this cause. Again, the initiative is all about climate pehle, and the first and foremost thing that we need to emphasize on is how vulnerable we are and what is the impact of our everyday choices, be it our individual choices, organizational choices, or even choices as a state. Sarah, when we speak about His Majesty the King, just like you mentioned, he's been an advocate of sustainability and a greener, cleaner world ever since one can, look at his term. But initially, I saw a lot of his initiatives and charities supporting entrepreneurs, especially young entrepreneurs who wanted to bring in innovation, who had great ideas. Are the two passions now married? Is he still supporting young people to be exploring innovative, sustainable solutions when it comes to businesses and the environment?
Yes, definitely. And in fact, his son, Prince William, is the head of the Earthshot Prize. But for the King, these two things that are utterly intertwined, the DNA. Just looking at the sort of areas like the British Asian Trust and the Prince's Trust, huge focus on both entrepreneurialism, innovation and climate. Very important to him.
Do you see the glass to be half empty or half full? Because yes, we are climate vulnerable, but at the same time, a country like Pakistan is also very energy deficient. We have a huge population. The winter months are around the corner. People are already talking about how the gas prices are perhaps going to see a 200% hike. Electricity, there's a lot of load shedding that happens. Our industries have been suffering. So how do we find our way at this crossroads, where there's sustainability, but at the same time, the need for energy?
I think what is required is both top down and bottom up, and it is about matching regulations with communities and working together to support the most vulnerable communities through the change and the poorest communities through the change that is required.
I feel going back to the earthy, organic ways would also help. Some of the solutions that we can look at are not really very alien to our culture. Not very long ago, or till about a year back, both in Britain and in Pakistan, people would carry their own bags to do their groceries. We've recently, in the last decade or so, made the switch to plastic, thinking it's more convenient. But now we know the hazards. Do you see it would be easy to switch back, or do you think we're too far gone for it?
Well, we've switched in the UK.
Yes.
It was inconceivable 15 years ago that we could have done without 7 Tesco's bags for our shopping, and now we just do it instinctively. I also think you made a very good point about these are not alien to our culture. I mean, talking to people like Yasmin Lowry at the Heritage Foundation and the Karachi Relief Trust, and the way they are thinking about the villages that they're seeking to rebuild using sustainable materials. When the villages are being rebuilt, building aquaculture pools, looking at ways of making bricks which don't require kilns. These are not. These are natural ways of doing things,
yes,
and very, very comfortable for the people of Sindh and beyond that they're helping.
Speaking of Sindh, I'm always taken back to a certain poem that's part of our curriculum, and it's by Elsa Kasi. And she speaks about the beautiful neem tree of the Sindh province. And we seem to be losing them really fast, but it's made an impression. It's part of our shared culture where somebody from Britain comes to Pakistan, makes it her home, and realizes that this is the thing that has made the most lasting impression on her. What do you think about the tree plantation drives? We have urban forests cropping up in major cities of the country, but what more can be done? And how keen do you find yourself? Are you drawn towards such drives?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Put me in a forest, I'm a very happy person. No, and the neem tree, when I was in Badin a few weeks ago, just driving past the neem is wonderful. I'm really supportive of the urban forest movement. And I also think it has an educational purpose as well as a sort of carbon capture, anti-climate change drive. And it reminds people of their land and roots them more in the land. Also really impressed by the efforts being made to support the mangroves, which I think are going to be absolutely vital, particularly as you see sea level rise, and these will help coastal communities and build the resilience of coastal communities. So I'm utterly swept away by these efforts.
Sarah, I do want to mention, you usually follow that thought, whatever is the last book you're reading. I'm definitely as impressionable as that. So the last book I read was Harari's Homo Deus, and one would like to imagine the case he presents is how he feels famines and conflicts and disease would be a thing of the past. Unfortunately, 2023 is ending on a note when all three seems to be making a comeback. There is conflict, there is disease, and food security is again questionable. What moving forward, again, what would be your ambition, on what would be your vision for 2024? How can UK and Pakistan continue working together towards these larger goals for humanity?
I think that we have a partnership. We're long-standing friends. I think if we work together, we can help address some of these appalling issues. Mm-hmm. The conflicts, the famine, the food insecurity, it's terrifying, but there are ways that we can support each other. And COP is one of them. And working together in COP and showing the leadership in COP is vital.
That's true. And there is a big number of people, especially young people, who are being affected by it. Either they are conflict refugees or they are climate refugees. Humanitarian causes require a fresh outlook. They need compassion as well. They need compassion from state. They need compassion from common people. And I feel that is the central idea and the promise and the message being sent out on the 75th birthday of His Majesty the King. Before we close, we'd love to know what are the plans for the celebrations at an occasion like this, where we are seeing the challenges also come up.
So in Karachi, we very much wanted to marry the King's environmental interests with the climate vulnerability, particularly in Sindh. And so we've chosen a village-to-village theme.
Wow.
So looking at what a classic English village might be like, but weaving through lots of elements of Sindh. So we're very much looking at that, the bottom up. It takes a village to find the solution.
It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to actually make all the wonderful things. And I think I would like to end on a note that if you have an ambition, be idealistic, be a big dreamer, push your boundaries, because anything that is worth achieving cannot be achieved in your lifetime. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being here. And the King, His Majesty, with his continued efforts and support for climate and sustainability, is a living example of that. But thank you once again for this exclusive conversation with Aaj Pakistan.